power ranking the ACC and FSU's arguments.
The ACC lawsuit is always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to keep you updated.
Hey, it's really nice to have you here on the mountain. I am JY, and this is my good friend Steve. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We want to do something a little bit different. We're usually steeped in facts and stick to the facts for the most part, give our opinions and have a discussion on those. This isn't going to be based, well, it's based in facts of the lawsuits, but it's more just Steve and me having some fun, looking at everything that we know thus far through the original motions to seal, motions to dismiss, amendments to all this kind of stuff. Good gracious, Steve. I don't know how many videos we've done, but my head is spinning. And we want to have a little bit of fun. We want to do some top threes, some power rankings, some top threes of both the FSU arguments and the ACC arguments. And we're going to throw a couple ducks out at the very end. We're going to be like, yeah, nice try. We put you at the very bottom of the list. Quack, quack, get out of here. Before we get into the specifics of the two, there's three that we want to talk about that really are instrumental to both sides. Like, we couldn't say, well, if we put this on the one side, we're going to have to put it on the other side. So we're going to start off with three that are super important to both sides and, quite frankly, are probably the biggest questions right now that we're waiting to get answered. So, number one, Steve, venue. We've talked about, the principle of priority versus exceptions to the principle of priority. To me, this is just number one overall. We got to figure out what venue is going to hear this first, if we're ever going to get there. But who's going to come first, the chicken or the egg, a.k.a. North Carolina or Florida? What do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously, we've talked about this. UNC got their suit, the ACC got their suit in first in the state of North Carolina. So normally that would just obviously automatically give them priority. Yep. Now, I think Florida State has brought up a couple of examples of times when that was a little bit of a shenanigans going on, right? And so maybe they could try and show that they should have had priority, whatever. So I think that one could go either way, but I think a really important consideration in this one is going to be the second item you talk about.
Okay, well, let's get to it then. After the rush to the courthouse, as FSU said, we're going to talk about jurisdiction. So that's going to be our number two on the list here for both sides, specifically talking about sovereign immunity and how does that play both in the state of Florida and in the state of North Carolina. We know what the two sides are saying to this, but what is the reality of this? That's, again, number 1A and 1B really here for our 1 and 2. Both really, really interesting pieces. What are you thinking with the sovereign immunity piece for Florida State?
So obviously it would be, first of all, for the ACC, it would be a massive win if they can keep the venue in North Carolina and basically argue that, they're trying to argue that sovereign immunity doesn't apply, that it's been basically given up. And Florida State is saying, no, it's not. We don't even, I think at one point they said, we don't even have the power to give it up or the right to give it up.
Right.
We can't do that. Even if you thought we did, we couldn't do that even if we wanted to.
Right.
And to me, this is really a sticking point. I have a hard time, and I've said this before, I have a hard time for a North Carolina judge to want to step in there and rule on the validity of a public institution in the state of Florida of whether they have sovereign immunity or not. So I could see that as a reason for the judge to say, you know what, you filed here first. Normally, we would give you, we would say it's going to be, the venue is going to be here. We're going to go first here. However, I think instead of that, because I believe that the state of Florida should have jurisdiction, it's their laws, it's their public institution. We're gonna punt the ball over to Florida and let them decide that before we move forward.
Yeah, so maybe he takes an exception to the priority because he doesn't want to have to deal with number 2. Get that sucker down to Florida. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hey, and if you've watched these episodes before, we're probably going to repeat some of what we said throughout the last 10 episodes. But again, just want to give some rationale if you're coming across us for the first time. Make sure you guys understand where we're at. So the third one, if we get, the 2 episodes ago, I said, if we even get to an answer on this, I don't know if we will. I hope we do. But this whole deal about the severity of penalties and how are they being defined, and we're going to call this liquidated damages versus alternate performance. Obviously, the one side, FSU, saying these are severe, just super severe, unenforceable penalties. You can't do liquidated damages. You got to have it's got to be tit for tat, and you can't do this. Whereas the ACC is saying this isn't liquidated damages. This is alternate performance. Your performance is to stay with the media right deal as that we have, or you can pay to get out of it in an alternate performance. So I really would love to know the answer to this. I hope we get there. I don't think we will, but we'll see.
I will say, so those first two items we talked about, they're very important. They're kind of logistics of the case.
Yes.
Who gets to go first? Where are we going to do this? Where it helps us set the stage. For me, number 3 is the most substantial consideration of this entire case. I think this is going to be the driver. We both have said from the beginning we think it goes to a settlement.
Right.
And I think this discussion, this argument, whatever you want to call it, between the liquidated damages and the alternate relief,
Alternate performance.
I think that's kind of the starting point of the negotiation. I think that's going to be the most substantial. A lot of these other arguments we're going to get into, some of FSU's arguments, some of the ACC's arguments, to me are just like chess moves to try and kind of pin the other side down so that they can get closer to what they're going to end up with between the liquidated damages and the alternate performance.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that before we'll start with FSU here next in terms of our top 3. But to that alternate performance piece, I was a little bit negative on that when we were doing the ACC motion to dismiss, and I just said we've always known this was there. Had a really good comment. I should have written down who it was from, but it was kind of that. Well, no, the ACC, and you've said this before too. It was bar the door. They can't get out, and now you're seeing some people like. At the time, I was like, I don't understand why these people are so convinced that this is a step forward to a settlement from the ACC side of things. But saying that there is an alternate performance is a step in a direction of a settlement. It's not there's nothing.
Right.
There is an alternate performance. So I do want to walk back a little bit of what I said on a couple episodes ago where I'm like, this doesn't mean anything. I don't understand the headlines. I do get that now. Like the ACC is saying, yes, there is another way out. Depending on who you listen to, they've been like, no, we're barricaded doors. You can't get out. Not happening.
Right.
So
a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
There you have it. That is wise man talk right there. Anyway, FSU, let's get to their top 3, Steve. Number 1, we've got this breach of fiduciary responsibility, another really, really big one. And we are going to, top 3, but our number 1s and 2s are going to be really our top 2 for both of these. But breach of fiduciary responsibility really focused on the duty to disclose. They put a whole bunch of shade on the ACC in their filings. About coercion and self-dealing, name-dropping all kinds of people, Raycom, this and that. But what does it actually get down to when you get to a judge? It's about duty of disclosure. Lots of questions there, lots of fire here, I think, for FSU to really have a decent case and bring up a decent claim here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge one. If we get to a trial or even just, get into actual arguments being made in court, I think this is a huge one. This is their bread and butter to basically try and show that the ACC was not representing Florida State or any of its other members, that they were representing themselves, acting in the best interest of themselves and of their other business partners. And so if they can show that, I think that is the widest door that they can open to blow this entire thing up.
Yep.
And so that's their strongest argument. That's probably not, 80 of their 100 eggs are going to be in that basket.
For sure. Yeah, I think the liquidated damages piece and then this fiduciary responsibility, definitely in the top 2 for FSU. The next one we have here, and really I was surprised that, the last motion that the ACC gave some answers to some other things in FSU's documents. They haven't really talked about this, and it has to do with standing. It is that 2/3 vote that the ACC board was supposedly supposed to give in terms of allowing the ACC to file a lawsuit. Apparently, that hasn't happened. I mean, there's been no news that it did, and FSU's claiming that it did not, and there's no standing because it didn't happen. So I'm a little surprised we haven't heard from the ACC in some of these more recent filings that they've had on that. So I don't know where to go, but it certainly seems like it could be a substantial issue.
And I know a lot of our Florida, I've been on War Chant. I've read the comments from a lot of our Florida State followers on our YouTube channel. a lot of people are putting a lot of stock in that argument. I don't know what to think of it either, because obviously a lot of fans are really, really putting a lot of stock in it, but it just has not been addressed hardly at all in these filings. So I wonder if it's a nothing burger. And I also wonder, I kind of wonder, is this something that's easily remedied? If the court says, hey, you need 2/3, okay, we'll schedule a vote today and do it, and it's taken care of. We'll affirm that the president had the authority to do this, or that the commissioner had the authority to do this.
Good point.
So it could be easily remedied.
Yep. Well, let's get to number 3, and that is the ACC Commissioner Phillips unilaterally giving ESPN an extension on their option to extend. Now, when we talked about that in episodes past, apparently an email was sent the day before he did this, but no vote was taken. The Board of Trustees didn't approve that, at least from what we're hearing from FSU. So another one that could be a little interesting here to see how this plays out for FSU and the ACC, if that was something that should have had a Board of Trustees agreement and vote and did not, that could be a problem for them as well.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like this one kind of pairs well with item 1. I think it's part of an overarching theme that Florida State is trying to show, that the ACC, the commissioner, and just the ACC in general were bad faith actors.
Right.
They were not acting in good faith. They were not standing up and representing Florida State and the other institutions. They were looking out for themselves and their deal with their media partner. And those two together, to me, have the possibility, if they can make those arguments and have a judge agree with them, that we could be talking about blowing it up altogether and not even having to worry about liquidated damages versus alternative performance.
Right. Yeah.
So those two are huge.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the ACC. Or do our top 3 for the ACC. Number 1 for them. And it gets back to the grant of rights being a contract and whether or not it is a contract. But obviously they say that it is. They've gotten the correct approvals to this. They've gotten all of that kind of stuff. But the piece to that then, that where the fire maybe ensues, is that FSU breached the contract because of bringing litigation. There's a whole list of reasons why they say they breached the contract. But to me, that's number 1. If they can convince a judge and they have strong enough arguments to say, hey, FSU is the one that actually breached this contract, that's going to be damning for Florida State University.
Absolutely. And I think that's their bread and butter of saying, hey, depending on if you like how this person participated in the negotiations or you don't like how that person participated, all of that is moot because we had a contract. And so I think that's the easiest thing for them to prove, which, again, I think pushes this back to the idea of the liquidated damages versus the alternative performance.
So number 2 for the ACC is just the confidentiality and the fiduciary duty of FSU to the media rights, and we just did an episode on this, the trade secrets that are the media rights, at least what they're saying are trade secrets. And again, FSU's breaching that confidentiality. Again, another issue. So you got a fiduciary duty attack from both sides.
Yes.
We're attacking you for fiduciary duty, and we're attacking you for confidentiality and fiduciary duty. So they're both going after that. A pretty heavy topic, different angles to it. But again, I think there could be some smoke here for ACC, depending on especially how this whole media rights is looked at in terms of a trade secret or not and all that kind of stuff. I think we will get some answers to that. I mean, that looks like that's going to play out here fairly quickly, at least in North Carolina. I'm sure it'll get kicked to Florida. I think we'll hear that too. So this one here, we probably will get a little bit of an answer to.
Yeah, and I think this one is like there's the biggest difference between upside and downside. I think argument 1 pretty much has almost all upside if they can make arguments. Argument 2, I think, is huge. It could really help them or hurt them.
Yeah.
A big win for them using this argument would be to get this. Let's keep it in North Carolina. Let's make this argument, and let's get the state of Florida to hold off. And hopefully, state of North Carolina says yes. This is trade secrets. This should have been protected, and Florida State, breached their obligation in this, and that would really threaten Florida State and push them to let's get a settlement. What's your number? But I still think, and I said this on another episode, I really think that it's you remember that game Don't Break the Ice when you're a kid, and
I love that game.
I really think they're getting out on some thin ice with that argument, again, of trying to basically say that the responsibilities to the media partner, to ESPN, are more important than any kind of fiduciary responsibility of the ACC to Florida State and the other member institutions. I think that puts them on dangerous ground. I think that puts them in a position where they're telling a public university that, hey, we're going to skirt sunshine laws and all of these different things,
right.
And the laws in your state don't matter, because what's really important is the confidentiality of our media agreement between the ACC and a private company, Disney, ESPN, and I think that holds some danger.
Yep. Well, let's go to number 3 then, and that is the potential statute of limitations in North Carolina. Again, some of these really get back to our very number one item, venue.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not in the right venue for some of these with the ACC, that turns the tide on 2 of these 3 that we're talking about, which are the ACC's biggest kind of potential darts that they've thrown that maybe can stick. So again, they get back to venue, but again, as we talked about, there is a statute of limitations in North Carolina. It's 3 years, so clearly this contract would be well beyond what that statute of limitations was. Do we get there? I don't know. Are we reaching a little further down in the barrel to come up with a third for the ACC versus FSU? Yeah, I guess we kind of are, because again, it gets back to venue here. Yes. So
I agree. So that one is only important so far as how the venue and the jurisdiction is decided. I think if this is held in North Carolina, if the state of North Carolina, they get to go first in that state and their courts, this could be a huge argument. I just have a really hard time, and I know I said this on another episode, but I have a really hard time believing that a court in the state of Florida is going to say, you know what, North Carolina said they have a statute of limitations, and they dismissed this because of statute of limitations.
Right.
So we're just going to not rule on this and not even weigh in on the merits of their case in terms of the laws in the state of Florida, because North Carolina has a statute of limitations. So this one is one of those, it could be a good argument. It maybe, or it could end up being a dud.
It's a good argument in one of
state.
The venues,
yes,
right?
Yes.
It's a complete dud in the other venue. So speaking of duds, let's get to our duds.
Okay.
Our lame ducks, call them whatever you want. Quack, quack, they can't fly. We'll go back to FSU. We'll start with them. We did a whole episode on this. And we called it the bombshell that wasn't, if you will. Mm-hmm. But this is the signature on the grant of rights. I'll link the episode up here. I'm not going to get into the details again on this, Steve.
Excuse me.
We have a whole episode on it, but we think that this whole signature, at the time there was 2 different presidents, the original grant of rights and the amended grant of rights, both signed by the president of FSU. We think it's a complete dud for the reasons we listed: performance, apparent authority, the fact that it's clearly what they do at FSU because 2 presidents did it 3 years apart or whatever it is. So we think it's a dud. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that duck's not taken off the pond. I think it's we said from the beginning we thought it was a nothing burger.
Yeah.
And now I think it might even be more than a lame duck. It might be a dead duck.
I think for us it's dead.
Okay.
I don't think it's dead for everybody, but it's definitely dead here on the Big Mountain. So let's go to the ACC. The one probably the most laughable thing, honestly, that we've seen in this whole thing is the ACC does not have a fiduciary responsibility to individual members. They only have it to the ACC. We talked a little bit off air. Why would they even say that? And maybe because they don't have anything better to say.
Yes.
That's how bad it is for this piece. But yeah, the lame duck, the dud for the ACC is this whole no fiduciary responsibility to individual members. Don't understand why they would say that, other than it's the only card they had to play, I guess.
When I originally read it, in going through the results of the hearing and their updated filing, I laughed out loud by myself when I was reading it. And then I even knew it was coming. And when you read it on another video, I laughed out loud again. Couldn't help it, because it just seems ridiculous. And okay, maybe they'll be able to show and prove that they don't have any fiduciary responsibilities. But then the question is, I feel like a judge would say, what is the purpose of you?
Right.
Like, what are you even doing then? So to me, total lame duck, dead duck. That thing's been shot and drowned and
right.
Not coming back up.
Yeah, definitely not. So, hey, that is where we sit. We thought it'd be kind of fun to do this. It also is a good summary. I mean, we've been through so much of this. I think just to summarize some of the main points, I think we hit most of them, not all of them. But give us some comments below. Let us know what we got wrong, what we got right. If you agree with everything that we said, if you disagree, you can tell us that again, except for the signature on the grant of rights. We've gone over that plenty of times. If you disagree, we understand that you disagree. Come up with something new for us here on the mountain. But hey, make sure you give us a like to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more to come on the ACC FSU. And just as a heads up, we are going to start weekly live episodes focused on the Big Ten and the Mountain West and just doing some updates on them. We're going to get them going in March. So again, make sure you get those notifications on so that you know when we go live. With that, we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.